Welcome to Georgian Court University's Town Hall. Please take a moment to get yourself settled. And I would like to introduce Tara Strickland, the Assistant Director of Editorial for Georgian Court University.
Thank you, Taisha. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's town hall, which will provide an update on university finances and key initiatives from the president and his leadership team. Today's panelists, led by GCU President Dr. Josefar Marbach, are Amy Bazio, CFO and Vice President for Finance and Administration, Dr. Janice Warner, Provost, Chris Kozak, Vice President for Enrollment Management and Retention, Gail Towns, Executive Director of Marketing and Communications, Dr. Paul DePonte, Executive Director of Mission Integration and Special Assistant to the President for Mission, Matt Manfra, Vice President for Institutional Advancement, and Matt McManus, Special Assistant to the President. Dr. Marbach is going to start us off with a prayer today. Dr. Marbach?
Thank you, Tara, and thank you, Taisha. This is a prayer to combat the coronavirus pandemic. Most merciful and triune God, we come to you in our weakness. We come to you in our fear. We come to you with trust, for you alone are our hope. We place before you the disease present in our world. We turn to you in our time of need. Bring wisdom to doctors, give understanding to scientists, endow caregivers with compassion and generosity. Bring healing to those who are ill. Protect those who are at most risk. Give comfort to those who have lost a loved one. Welcome those who have died into your eternal home. Stabilize our communities. Unite us in our compassion. Remove all fear from our hearts. Fill us with confidence in your care. Dear Lord, provide us the wisdom to guide Georgian Court through this pandemic and into the future. We ask this in your name, amen. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to what is now our second town hall meeting related to the virus and the future of Georgian Court University. Just for your information, this meeting is being recorded, and a link will be provided to the community sometime next week. The focus on today's meeting is really the finances of the university and our programs moving forward. It was inspired by a meeting I had with faculty leadership and members of the Salary and Benefits Committee, who brought forward some concerns over recent developments, particularly around our 403B contribution and the suspension for the upcoming fiscal year. We will be holding a second meeting in 2 to 3 weeks that will focus on our reopening plan. So there were many questions that dealt with reopening. Provost Warner will address many of those in her remarks, but we will focus today primarily on the financial aspects and address some of those reopening questions if time permits. We will take questions at the end of the meeting. Many have been submitted in writing already. And we have a chat box open so that people can submit additional questions. And if we don't answer them today, we will provide some type of written answer to those questions in the upcoming weeks, and maybe even when we put this recorded message out on the website. This is a time, while we are in great uncertainty, a time for renewal at Georgian Court. It's a time for physical renewal, and we'll talk about that with our master plan. It's a time for intellectual renewal, and we'll talk about that with some of our new programs, and also our student concerns over how we introduce issues of race into our curriculum. And it's also a time for spiritual renewal, and we'll understand that as we read the signs of our times. And not only are we dealing with a pandemic and racial unrest, but our relationship with the Conference for Mercy Higher Education continues to change. The agenda for today will proceed as follows. After my remarks, I'll ask our CFO, Amy Bazio, to give us a financial and budget update on the state of the university. She'll be followed by Provost Warner. Janice will talk about academic and student affairs and update some of those programs, focusing on growth strategies and tactics that are being employed. Chris Kurzak will then follow Janice with an update on enrollment and the strategies that he's starting to employ to grow our undergraduate, graduate, and adult learners. Gail Towns will follow up and give us a brief preview of the brand refresh that we've started to undertake and will be rolling out in the next few weeks. Paul DuPont will talk about mission and how we begin to re-examine it in light of the sign of the times. Matt Nanfer will then give us an advancement update, some very good news that's coming out of his shop, and also a brief overview of our endowment. And then finally, Matt McManus will help update us on the master plan, especially our energy monetization program, which will be designed to bring better energy efficiency to the campus. After that, I'll do a just very brief wrap up, and then we will take questions and answers at this point. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Amy Basio for that financial update. Amy?
Spending some of your afternoon with us. If you could go to the next slide. Thank you. So what we're projecting for fiscal year 20 year end is a deficit of $4.5 million. The budget deficit was $1.1 million. Then there is a $3.4 million additional deficit due to a decrease in tuition revenue, a decrease in operating revenue from camps and conferences, golf outing, less interest. And then there's about $1 million of additional expenses. So when you do the math, it's $3.4 million of additional net expenses added to the $1.1 million that was already budgeted for the year. With this in mind, we began back in April. I started April 1st, so back in April, looking at this projected deficit. We were identifying ways that we could minimize the deficit. One of the ways that we all have contributed to is savings through furloughs and senior administrative salary reductions. That's approximately $452,000 of savings for fiscal year 20. We've asked management to restrict the use of the American Express cards and to manage discretionary spending to only those costs and expenses that were absolutely needed for fiscal year 20. We could go to the next slide. On June 12th, the Board of Trustees approved a deficit budget of $3.9 million. The way we arrived at $3.9 million is fairly straightforward. It was a top-down approach. We were required to reduce the budget by 10% in our net operating margin. The budget that we presented to the board did not include any of the fiscal year 21 budget requests. The assumptions were several in bringing this budget before the trustees. We assumed that there was no tuition increase. We assumed that there were no pay raises. We assumed the CARES Act reimbursement, additional reimbursements of $1 million. That's aggressive, but we have that. We assumed reduced room and board occupancy because of the pandemic. And we assumed a regular fall startup, meaning that classes would begin, whether they're online or in person or a combination, that there would be no delay in the start of classes. What is not included in this there are no additional expenses for the pandemic related to additional expense or a decrease in revenue. You go to the next slide, please. This is a slide that we shared with the Board of Trustees, and it's selected budget priorities. So you'll see what the budget is for 19 and 20 of 8 million, and the requests came through at 10 million. So there's approximately $2 million increase in operating requests that came from all of the divisions throughout the university. In knowing that there was a concern for a continued and even larger deficit than we had anticipated for fiscal year 20, we presented the operating priority column to the board and asking for support of this $960,000 of additional operating expenses. At the board, they approved the $299,000, $300,000, you could see that highlighted in blue, for the marketing and communication needs. This is going to be funded by the proceeds from the sale of the President's House and will not impact our operating budget directly. So there will be additional expense authorized for $300,000, and that will come through additional resources from the sale of the President's House. Next slide. So looking at a $3.9 million deficit, the board had asked us to reduce the budget by $2.5 million in savings. So we went in, we were approved at 3.9 million. It's anticipated by the board that we will gather $2.5 million in savings to bring the budget deficit down to something more in line, which was proposed and adopted for this year's budget, about 1.1 million. So ways that we've been able to garner savings already through the cooperation of everyone in the university is another 452,000 from the current furloughs that are going through August, through the senior administrative salary reductions, and as well the upcoming temporary faculty salary reductions that will begin in September. In getting to this $2.5 million, it was presented and approved that we needed to suspend the 403B match to generate approximately $900,000 in annual savings. The actual savings will be a bit less than that because we will only have 11 months starting August 1st, but on an annual basis, it would be $900,000. And last but not least is we're looking to initiate new academic programs to generate additional revenue. We have two roads for us. We have additional decreases in expenses or additional revenue. And we're examining and looking at both pathways to trying to bring our budget into balance. What we will be doing for fiscal year 22 budget is we will be creating a budget advisory committee. I have co-chaired such committees at prior institutions where I worked, and I think it's a great way for the university to come together and look at the operations and the expenses and revenues as a whole, and to have input from various constituencies. So the co-chairs of the Budget Advisory Committee would be Dr. Warner and myself. We would have faculty and staff representation on the committee, and they would be appointed by the president in consultation with the various vice presidents. We would have a maximum of 6 members plus the AVP for financial planning, and that's Elise Franklin. We will have our first meeting in October to start looking at initially what the tuition rate would be that we would be setting for the coming year. And hopefully this process will be supported by budget planning software that currently the university does not have. We use a number of very tedious Excel spreadsheets. So we're looking to implement a software as a service for budget planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate that overview. And again, we're looking at, as Amy mentioned, finding savings where we can. We know we probably will have some savings with regard to travel, catering on campus, those sorts of things. But many of those savings will be offset by increased cleaning costs, the provision of protective equipment to faculty and staff, making sure that we have enough sanitary equipment around and we have hand sanitizers and other types of things to make sure the university is safe. So we'll continue to look at that and see where we can save money, where it makes sense as we do move forward. With that, let me turn it over to Provost Warner. Janice can give us an update on where we're at in terms of academic affairs, student affairs, some of the new programs we're looking at, and our proposed response for the opening in the fall. So Janice, please take it away.
Thank you, President Marbach. So as always, in academic and student affairs, we're looking at actualizing the first two compass points, providing an excellent providing students with academic excellence and an exceptional student experience. So how do we do this as everything is changing and really our whole reality has changed? We really feel that it's important to give some life to our campus. And our students in general, we know through the survey that we gave them at the end of the semester, as well as the way we normally interact with them, do not thrive on a purely remote environment. They really do need some interaction with faculty, with staff. And so how do we do that and do that safely? Assuming that New Jersey moves to phase 3 reopening, we do want to provide some in-person instruction in the fall. And I know faculty have been thinking this over and how they can do it, how they can do it safely. We have a strategic team on academic readiness, which includes faculty, and we've had the Center for Teaching and Learning talking with faculty members about what different strategies are. And so what we've put in place in the plans is something called High Flex, which includes many different things. And I don't want to go into it in detail, but some key concepts are, it incentivizes students to stay away if they've engaged in a risky situation. So if they know they've been around somebody who has either tested positive for the COVID virus, or they test positive themselves, or they think they might be sick, they are encouraged to stay away by not requiring them to come into the classroom in order to progress in their classes. So that's one important part of the High Flex model. The other is that groups of students are brought back in small groups. So we set up the schedule so that the caps on classes was at 18, allowing students to come to the classroom in groups of 9 plus the instructor. Once a week rather than the full class time. During those sessions, faculty need to be creative, and I know this is difficult to figure out exactly what the best thing to do in the classroom is, but many faculty members have come up with great ideas of what to do in the classroom just to enhance the academic experience for the students. In those classrooms, everyone is required to wear face coverings. And in fact, we've ordered plastic shields for faculty to make it easier to communicate more freely. Faculty can choose to use those shields. They can choose to use their own face masks that they think maybe have more protection. They can choose whatever they want, but these things will be available. Some courses that were scheduled to be in person will also become virtual. They will be fully online courses, but include some time where the classes will meet via video conference, and this will be clear on the schedule as well. To make things safer too, we've examined classrooms. Many of our classrooms, as you know, are too small, even for the small groups to use safely. And so we're repurposing many other rooms to be used as classrooms for the fall, including the ballroom, the Macaulay Heritage Center, and the mansion. This also will reduce occupancy in buildings. So as we spread classes throughout campus, it's less likely that students will come in increased contact with each other as they go between classes or just move through buildings. Residence hall capacity will also be reduced, and student activities will be mostly virtual. That's still being looked at, exactly what's gonna happen there, but definitely the residence hall capacity has already been decreased, and it may decrease even further. Outdoor spaces are being enhanced with Wi-Fi and also being set up for study and downtime. And likewise, there will be some outdoor spaces to eat near the dining hall. Again, trying to use our beautiful campus and all the spaces that are provided within it. And the Office of the Secretary of Higher Education provided standards for reopening about 2 weeks ago. Last week, we received the template that we need to complete, and we're in the process of writing our plan to match these standards, and we'll be sharing those shortly. And then, as Joe said, we'll be having a town hall to go through those in detail. So that's just a kind of a sense of where we are as far as trying to continue our academic and student affairs programs into the fall as safely and as engagingly as possible. Can you go to the next slide? Or maybe you did. I'm sorry. So after that, what we have done and what we continue to do, and faculty are heavily involved in this at all times, is to focus on growth. And one thing that we've talked about for a lot of times is the School of Nursing and how important it has become. And so we made the decision to position the School of Nursing as a separate school. And Terry Wormser has agreed to take over the position as dean of that school. And we're strengthening our ties with Hackensack Meridian Health, which has always been a great partner. The nursing faculty have put together a proposal for the accelerated Bachelor of Science in Nursing. It uses the same curriculum as our regular Bachelor of Science in Nursing, but it's a second degree program aimed at people who have an undergraduate degree and then realize that they'd like to become a nurse. It's already been presented to the Board of Nursing and has gone through some hurdles, but we don't know exactly when the final review process will happen. As all of us, the Board of Nursing also has been delayed because of the pandemic, and they've also had furloughs and haven't met as regularly as they plan to. As far as other programs, we were happy to hire leaders for both health studies and computing information systems, two important new programs in our undergraduate arena. And so 2 faculty members are joining us for the fall, and we're really excited about what they'll do to help grow those programs. And we're continuing to plan for the Nursing, Health, and Wellness building that will visually solidify our commitment to these fields of study and make significant improvements to the learning facilities. And I was happy to be able to show you the first sketch of the possible building that will be in the Italian Garden. So if you would like to unveil it, Taisha. There it is. So our architects, Kimmel Bergret, have met with many, many different faculty in the health areas. And based on all their input, this is their first sketch of the potential building, which would sit on the lower end of the Italian Gardens. For a point of reference, the statue that's in the middle of the Italian Gardens, the eagle-like statue, I don't know that it's exactly an eagle, is in the picture so that you can get a feel for where it would be. And the Apollo fountain would be behind this building. It'd have openings on both sides and have not only state-of-the-art facilities, but open spaces for faculty and students to gather and to collaborate on a variety of things. Finally, just to highlight some other initiatives right now, we're working really tightly with enrollment management, especially on marketing our graduate programs. We have several really well-developed graduate programs, and they haven't been able to get enough students on a regular basis. Part of that was we really hadn't been focused in marketing, and that's changing. So I'm really excited about that. And finally, we've mentioned this before, but we were in the process of meeting with stakeholders in the area to develop a first generation Latinx academic cohort program. And our first step is to partner with a group called Unidos US, who have a curriculum or co-curricular support program called Avanzando Through College. We were asked to partner with them, and Jaime Rivera is leading the efforts and this will be a stepping stone to a fully academic program where we will bring students in to work in a cohort on their first 2 years of a college degree.
Thank you, Janice. And it's a nice segue into the presentation by Chris Kurzak, who I believe it was Chris Trigani asked for a comprehensive enrollment plan, and Chris Kurzak stepped up to the plate. He's going to present that to the faculty and the rest of the university here and now. So Chris, take it away.
Next slide, please. So I'd like to begin with the enrollment funnel, which is always what a good admissions or enrollment person will start off with. Here are the numbers of applications that we received for this year. The number of accepts for freshmen and transfer and graduate are before you here. And if you look at that column, if you look at the comparison closely, some important items to notice is, of course, we're going to go right to see how many deposits we have for 2020 deposits. And when we go down that column there, we see that our total freshmen is at 168, and that is compared to 165 last year at this time. So to say we're ahead is definitely, it's a nice place to be, but of course we're very cautious about moving through the summer and with what will happen in people's lives as we go in through July and into August, right before school begins. Also, if you look on, while you're looking at the freshmen, one thing that I'm very pleased about, if you look at the number of 2020 accepts that we had, we've had 100 more accepts for 2020 than we did for 2019. Yet we are neck and neck with deposits. You would think we would be ahead. However, given what has transpired, this is where we stand. But having the admission counselors and the faculty who have been accepting students work diligently at that, that's something that indeed I'm very proud of. Transfer, it's a different story this year. We are down in the number of transfer students that will be enrolling this fall, and we do anticipate that. Several reasons why. First being that Tracy and Dan, our transfer counselors, did not have the opportunity to have face-to-face meetings at the community colleges that we recruit students from this past spring, which is when we would have received many more applications and get many more students accepted. Also, people questioning the value of a college at this time, going from a community college to a four-year school. So there's been many things against us in really driving the ship in this area, and you will see that we have 146 deposits compared to 192 last year, and that is very substantial and something that we are keeping our eye and keeping very much abreast of. Graduate programs, collectively right now, we stand at 135 compared to 148. I would say that it is neck and neck. We are deploying some additional campaigns throughout the summer to drive the number of graduate students for fall enrollment. However, we did cannibalize on some of our fall enrollments due to a larger summer start that began on May 26th. So these are our enrollment numbers, and of course we are working very diligently in all areas to continue to drive not only what we can do for fall 20, but really for planning for the 21 and 22 cycles. Taisha? So what we've started, and something that I started with, as I told you when I started on January 13th, is that we really have to position the campus to be bold in everything that we do. And I arrived January 13th, and one process that the university was not doing very well and that I had to put resources in and really take a look at was our Slate database. Slate is an incredible CRM, and the university was not using it to its fullest. As a matter of fact, some of the processes in Slate for completing applications, reading applications, both at the undergraduate and graduate level, were not best practice. And I've had to spend a considerable amount of time in staffing as well as with consultants to help us fix this. We are actually looking at almost taking down every communication email that we have planned and then rebuilding it from scratch so that we can have always putting the best foot forward to our prospective and admitted students. Slate is a very powerful tool, and it's something that we are going to keep our eye on and become very proficient in under my leadership. We have our new, for undergraduate students, for our undergraduate recruiting, we have signed with EAB Royal, they're formerly known as Royal, and they are going to be our new university search partner looking for students for us. Our campaign is to really saturate New Jersey with a little bit of Pennsylvania, a little bit of Delaware, a little bit of New York, but to really have an aggressive early outreach campaign, adding 60,000 new names that have been purchased from a variety of sources to add to the current names that we already have in our system to drive enrollment for the fall of 21 and 22. We're going to do an aggressive outreach to sophomores and of course to juniors who are now moving up this fall into seniors and juniors. This campaign that we're doing is very new, our early outreach. It's an electronic campaign. It is going to be it is done by EAB, which has the best track record that I've ever seen in the business for helping colleges with enrollment. And there's going to be a fulfillment and an offer as part of the early outreach campaign to really get the name of Georgian Court University into the homes of students early on. Next month, very soon, we will begin our application marketing to over 70,000 contacts. That includes both new names that we have purchased, as well as our organic names that are already in our system that have raised their hands that they're interested in Georgian Court for fall 21. And we will begin our application marketing campaign beginning next month with a series of emails, a series of mailings to the families to engage them to start the application, to begin the application, so that we can talk about how great Georgian Court University is, our values, and of course add affordability to that so we can drive enrollment for fall 21. In the springtime, once we have all of our students accepted, we will then deploy our Yield IQ, which is an aggressive way of, an aggressive business-to-business device that our admission counselors will deploy to have students realize that we really want you at Georgian Court, and indeed to have students, you know, choose us. And it's something that has worked successfully. We tried it this past fall, this past spring, and we deployed it in March in a program called Deposit IQ. And we definitely did pick up some additional deposits that we would not have picked up if we did not have this program. So our new search partner, we're very excited about that and really have a feel that this is going to be one of the large processes that we deploy to really drive enrollment. Faculty have been really tremendous in helping with us learning about their programs, as well as in interacting with our admitted students. I know there was a lot of notes that were handwritten by faculty this past spring, and we're going to continue to ask faculty for their help in introducing them to students that are interested in their majors and to really establish some great connections early on. We have, as you know, we will have an open house this fall. We will offer it both. If it's possible, it will be on campus. If it's not possible to have everybody on campus, we may have some people on campus. And then of course, we have to offer it virtually as well. We also we want to make sure that our faculty are going to be connected to admitted students sooner rather than later in the process. And also, the entire admission process this year in the undergraduate office under the guise of Priscilla Alicea, she is going to make sure that we accept students early. We want to indeed get the word out that you are admitted to Georgian Court earlier and sooner rather than later, quite frankly. And so we're gonna indeed make sure that we have all the processes in place to get our decision letters out, to get our merit awards out, and then through the excellent direction of Cynthia and the financial aid staff to follow up with the award package. So we do have a very solid plan in place for following up with our applicants. Virtual activities are going to continue, as I mentioned. We are beginning a few on-campus tours of families walking around or driving around with masks and using all of the proper new norms that we have to go through. Our virtual activities include information sessions for graduate students, for students of our adult learning students, as well as for our undergraduate students. We're also signing up for virtual college fairs, which is something very new for myself after working so long in university admissions. We're now going to be using virtual college fairs. And in continuing with our bold approach, we've signed a couple of months ago with a company called Carnegie Dartlet. They're going to get us more inquiries. We've been receiving approximately anywhere between 75 and 100 new inquiries. These are students who go online to special websites that Carnegie Dartlet designs called College Express, and we've advertised in the Catholic college section, the Northeast colleges, the smaller colleges. We've purchased 4 of their different applications, and we are getting some good inquiries from them. An inquiry comes in like this, an admission counselor follows up with it. So indeed, it's a great process, and it's another way of just getting the name of Georgian Court out there. They also have virtual opportunities, or actually the digital marketing, the redirecting on websites that we use. So indeed, they are helping us with some of our digital presence, and indeed, we're very happy with that. Financial aid and affordability is definitely going to be something that we've definitely did it for this fall. Cynthia and her staff did a great job following up with all of our admitted students. But indeed, as people begin to question the value of a college education, we are definitely very interested in having our awards, our financial aid awards, be the first that a student receives when they're admitted to Georgian Court. And I'm happy to say that in June, we solidified the model for our merit awards for 21, and we're able now to go to market with those and let students know exactly the commitment that Georgian Court University will make in that student for them to indeed obtain their degree. I know I talk a lot about undergraduate, but graduate is very much a focus of mine. Our graduate enrollments have been falling in the last several years. In the last 10 years, I was asked to put a presentation together for you at the first faculty meeting, and I showed you that bar graph. And most certainly, we are doing things to change this around. Besides a whole new approach to recruiting students coming out of the graduate office, where we are actually we need to recruit graduates. We need to follow up with our recent undergraduates that are graduating, and as well as we need to go out there and begin the purchasing of names of people who perhaps are interested in the majors that we have. So just as I described earlier about the way we purchase names through EAB for our undergraduate program, very soon in the next couple of days, we're going to be identifying our search partner to help us do this with graduate students. And it's not only an email campaign, but it'll also be a digital campaign with some redirecting of websites and our banner logos in Facebook and in other search engines. So it's a very comprehensive plan that we're actually looking at, and something that other universities our size have had great accomplishment with. And we are definitely looking forward to moving that graduate process into our programs so that we can indeed have, get our right share of graduate students. And finally, it's a new look that we're looking at Georgian Court University from my eyes, to be absolutely honest with you. When with Gail's cooperation, we have looked at our recruitment materials, and we really are overhauling everything. We are going to be announcing a campaign very shortly that is bold. There's no doubt about it. It has new colors, new excitement to it. And it's going to mirror not only our admission publications. We're looking at a refresh of the main web page, as well as microsites for admissions, both undergraduate and graduate. And the very next slide will show you what this campaign looks like, and we're going to saturate New Jersey with it. So I hope you find that this storyboard here that we're showing you today excites you. As you can see, it's very collegiate, and it's really bold, and it's really what I want it to be. As I look at the great work that our faculty do, and I look at what Georgian Court has stand for over 100 years, we need to really put ourselves out there. We need to be more aggressive in marketing and in the admission work. And we will do that, but we need the backup, and this is what the backup look is going to be of the admission materials moving forward. We added a couple of colors, very nice accent colors to our beautiful blue and gold, and with some different overlays and some design features, we're really going to have just a fantastic website and really state-of-the-art publications moving forward. When I arrived at Georgian Court, this is the communication plan that the undergraduate admissions office was able to put together for me. These is the series of communications that went out. And I was not satisfied with this, and sat down with many of the staff members in the admissions office, and we came up with a new plan. So take a look at this plan, and now take a look at our future plan. Our future plan, it's almost 300 times more contacts with prospective students starting in June, starting in sophomore year. We need to be inviting these students to campus, connecting with faculty, finding out about our programs, finding out about our majors, finding out that Georgian Court is affordable. And so we indeed, as you can see, putting a plan like this together is a very difficult challenge. We're doing this not only for freshmen, but we're also doing this for our transfer communication flow, as well as our graduate communication flow. So we definitely want to use all of the resources that we have that we can build out in Slate, which was my very first comment of what we need to change, what we need to really work on at the university. All of this is possible, and fixing the Slate database was the start of it. And this is what our future communication plan looks like. And I'm telling you right now, we can all be very proud of that and the hard work that the admissions staff and Taisha have done in putting this together.
Thank you, Chris. And now Gail can expound on that, but we're really seeking to develop a comprehensive approach to enrollment, and retention goes hand in hand. And we won't forget the students that we currently have, and that's why part of many of our efforts with regard to the pandemic and reopening in the fall are geared at retaining those students. And I know that's been a question that we'll address in a couple of weeks, but it's come up with a couple in the chats. There's a lot of concern. We understand that, but it is a dynamic landscape. And speaking of a dynamic landscape, Gail, would you walk us through the brand refresh that you're starting to work with?
Myself. I needed to unmute myself. I've been practicing this for a week. So hopefully you can hear me now. It is a dynamic landscape. And Taisha, you can go to the next screen. I am so excited by the work that lay ahead. I know there are challenges. I know that there are uncertainties. But if there's anything we know, it's what we stand for at Georgian Court. And if there was ever a time that we could stand on that foundation, it's now. The slide that you see here in front of you is just an example of something that we did very recently, and that was revisiting the brand expression and really putting it out there. So thanks a lot to Taisha Brunson and the marketing and communications team for kind of trying to reposition the expand possibility phrase that we've been using since about 2015. But no matter how we say it, no matter how we cut it, no matter how we present it, everything that we do as it relates to branding is about the 191 of you on this call today. It is about how people perceive us, how they perceive our actions, and our output, that is our graduates. So pretty pictures are great, fonts and video are dynamic, that's wonderful. But at the end of the day, it really is about what we stand for and what we produce. Again, that relates to mission. It's based on research and data. One of the areas that we have to strengthen this year, non-negotiable, is video strategy, content strategy. Taisha, you can move on to the next screen. All of that plays a role in this jumping off point, which is the collaboration with a group called Seven Loaves, Higher Education Marketing, and one of their collaborators called Armor Digital Marketing. You see here a couple of examples from a new style book that was delivered last week. I think it was probably July 1st, we receive this, and a lot of it is an expression, a revisitation, if you will, of what we already know about Georgian Court, but how do we express ourselves in a way that's fresh, that's inviting, that's exciting, that's dynamic. Some of it is new colors, some of it is new fonts. This, again, for enrollment marketing is the jumping off point. Next screen, please. Again, high energy visuals, and this is the visual generation, whether they are in high school, in college, or even graduate school, they are driven by what they see. A style guide, creative platform, a refresh of our homepage as we know it, plus a completely separate admissions-focused microsite that is nothing but what admissions-focused people want to see. That is in the works right now and actually is slated to be done by the middle of August. Again, you'll continue to hear us talk about aggressive digital marketing. We still do some traditional marketing, but I would tell you that 90% of our spend is digital, whether it is display ads or search or social media ads, or even digital radio, digital broadcast, Spotify, Pandora, etc. We will emphasize in the coming year our program distinctions and the assets of those programs. And it's to my right, I don't know if it's to your right or to your left, you see a Facebook post here for an event that happened 2 weeks ago. This is an example of how we integrate our strengths across marketing and the experience that we want people to have. And we want them to know that there's a value added experience that they are in store for at Georgian Court. Dr. Ashley Elmore in the School of Business and Digital Media recently led a webinar on marketing during crises. And we've all been at home for the last 100+ days. And I don't think I ever want to hear the phrase in these unprecedented times again. So if you hear me say it, call me out on it. But how as a marketer do you pivot? How as a marketer do you communicate? How as a marketer do you get your brand out there? And these real-time, real-life, really important conversations are things that our faculty are able to have with prospective students and with the world. So using that as a leveraging point is something that I'm really excited about. There are other ideas in the pipeline from, I believe, clinical mental health. There's some from integrative health over in Dr. Sachiko Kamagata's area. She has a very long list. And so we're very excited about integrating some of those tactics. And again, research, as well as data analysis. Next screen, Taisha. And lastly, but not unimportantly, this is a time for us to be unapologetic, to really own who we are. And that is at Georgian Court, we own the fact that we are affordable, that we offer aid to students, that we are accessible to students who might be first generation college students, to families who never thought they'd see a student come to college. We own the fact that our identity is built on a foundation of social justice and that we don't not respond when we need to respond. And lastly, healthcare and the helping professions, that's where we're seeing a lot of traction, both in the labor market and in student interest. So how do we take that and run with it? There was a question that came in earlier about being nimble enough to pursue opportunities, including, for example, the fact that there are international students that might need a home, an academic home for the fall. Sorry about my dog. There are students who are enrolled at colleges in other states who might need to stick closer to home. We are being as nimble as possible to go after as many students as possible who are the right fit for Georgian Court. And I look forward to working with all of you to drive that message home. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. And now, as we talk about the message and positioning us for the future, and part of what that last slide Gail talked about is that it's tied to our mission. I'll ask Paul to talk about the time now to re-examine our mission, and given some of the circumstances that we find ourselves in, and how we go forward with examining that mission to make sure it's appropriate for who we are and where we want to be, and how we best are able to fulfill that. So Paul, please take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. The Office of Mission Integration is pursuing a few interesting grant opportunities that will help to ensure that Georgian Court's mission remains vital in the years ahead. The first of these comes from the Network for Vocation in Undergraduate Education, or NetView. We're already in the first year of that grant. The grant allows us to prepare materials for vocational awareness, particularly by drawing out the notion of personal interconnectedness. Our hope is to have these materials finished and ready for distribution to students for the spring semester. A second grant is an exciting opportunity from the Lilly Foundation that would increase GCU's outreach beyond the gates and inspire greater civic engagement. The proposal was submitted about a month ago. Awards will be announced this fall. The third one, again from NetView, is the one listed on this slide. It's called Reframing the Institutional Saga, and it comes at a great time for GCU. Frankly, the grant would facilitate work that we already have on our plate, the important task of reflecting on our mission for our future, in particular in light of the changing realities and demands of our time. There's a phrase that has become popular in the church, especially since the Second Vatican Council. Joe used it himself a bit earlier, the importance of reading the signs of the times. So, as we look at the signs of our times, the demand for racial justice, climate change, the present pandemic, and how it is challenging us to think less individualistically, less selfishly, and more in terms of the common good, we as a university are right to consider whether our mission, including our mission statement, adequately reflects the changing demands of the times. Of course, this will be a collective effort and will take a great deal of reflection and collaboration. I know that Dr. Marbach has made this task a priority for the coming year. Another important aspect of the future of Georgian Court's mission is captured in the word covenant. Covenant is the word chosen by the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas and the Conference for Mercy Higher Education that best names the spirit of their institutional sponsorship for the coming years. I'll read from the preamble a brief excerpt. This covenant reflects a desire to strengthen a shared vision and mission of the university. As an institution standing firmly in the spirit and ethos of the Sisters of Mercy and the rich heritage of the Catholic intellectual tradition, a Mercy-sponsored college or university has the obligation to keep the Mercy heritage and Catholic identity of the institution robust and credible among conflicting worldviews, and to engage with peer CMHE institutions on the means to do so. So we'll be hearing the words covenant and covenantal partnership more frequently in the coming years. Dr. Marbach has been invited to sign the covenant document in the early part of next year. Finally and briefly, planning for programming has been continuing apace. I'll just highlight one bullet point here. As you know, the pandemic decided for us that we had to postpone last year's Critical Concerns Week, Earth, Land, and Sea, which was to take place in the third week of March. We're still going to have it, but it may out of necessity take on a different form and format. One promising possibility, however, is that this new format may suggest new ways to think creatively about how we might best investigate and incorporate the 5 critical concerns into our study and reflection. For example, we might discover that along with our tradition of highlighting the themes separately, one per year, we might gain from thinking about how the critical concerns themselves tend to intersect in real life. So for instance, how do the issues pertaining to the environment converge with the issues of protracted racism? We'll be announcing the new dates for Critical Concerns Week as soon as possible.
Thank you, Paul. And now let me ask Matt Manfra for an update on advancement. And in response, I saw one question earlier about couldn't we find a large donor who could save us in some way? And that'd be great, but even donors today are investors and they want to make sure that they're investing in an institution that's going to be around for a long time. So that's part of why we're driving a budget towards minimizing our deficits as we go forward and having a good business model. So it makes Matt's job a little bit easier. Maybe he'll find that large angel donor, but he's been doing a pretty good job, he and his shop and his team, up to date. So Matt, please give us that update and a little bit more on the state of the endowment.
Thank you, President Marbach, and thank you all for joining this afternoon. I hope you are all safe and sound. My first slide has some good news. This first graph will show our fundraising attainment over the last 5 years. You'll note that this past fiscal year, FY 19-20, which ended just 2 weeks ago, June 30th, has been a record year. We are still in the process of counting gifts that came in last week. So this number is now over $1.67 million and will grow closer to 1.7 million by the time our books are closed. From a perspective standpoint, that's about $200,000 more than what our goal was for the year. So I want to thank all of you, all of our donors, our faculty, staff donors who are watching right now for your support, particularly those of you who give via payroll deduction. The reason we've hit these numbers is based on your support and will help us in the future. I also want to thank and commend the institutional advancement team who helped make this happen. We closed 2 major gifts this year that led to our success. And I'm really, truly fortunate to be working alongside such talented fundraisers. And of course, none of this could be done without the leadership of our president, who led us through, needless to say, a challenging year. Fundraising this fiscal year has been a challenge, not only at Georgian Court, but throughout the industry. For us to say that we've exceeded our goal during this time is really impressive, particularly since all of our fundraising work has been done remotely. We haven't been able to have face-to-face meetings with donors since March. And we had to postpone our largest fundraiser, our golf outing, usually held in May, to September. So you can get a sense of why I'm so proud of our leadership and the team. This has been a very strong year, and we need to continue the momentum in order to provide more support to the university. My next slide will show another sign of promise for our fundraising. This chart is the amount of unrestricted dollars we've raised in the past fiscal year as of the end of May. So we're still counting unrestricted dollars right now. The other 2 years that you'll see on this graph are complete years. So you'll see we've done, again, a pretty good job this year in those unrestricted dollars. And again, those unrestricted dollars are raised through our Lions Fund, and they are essential to ensure maximum flexibility for the institution. These funds can be used for our greatest needs, which we've learned over the past few months can change drastically at a moment's notice. Unrestricted dollars are not only important to Georgian Court, but for all institutions. And as the president mentioned, sometimes these unrestricted dollars can be very difficult to raise. Many donors want to give to specific funds, and unrestricted are really are for the university's greatest needs. So if you're not one of the 35% of our faculty and staff who contribute to Georgian Court, I'd ask that this year you consider making a gift to the Lions Fund to help our unrestricted dollars moving forward. The next slide is a brief overview of the university's endowment, which stood at over $58 million at the end of the last fiscal year. And this data is based off of our institution's 990. You'll note that nearly 60% of our endowment, that's the portion in the green part of the pie chart, is in a quasi-endowment or a board of trustees designated fund. These are available for flexible and immediate use. This is, again, another example of some of the flexibility that the university has from an endowment standpoint. Our permanent endowment is for donor restricted funds, which include things like scholarships. These dollars sit and produce earnings, which in turn become part of our temporarily restricted funds, which are then distributed as scholarships and awards. So 58 million, what does that mean in relation to where we are with other institutions? What does that number mean? And our next slide will give you a better sense of how we're doing in relation to other private institutions. First, note that we're using fiscal year 2018 numbers to maintain consistency across the board, since these other schools last reported their figures at that time. But you'll see where we stand in really a pretty impressive pack, particularly due to the size of our institution. Obviously, can't have a story about private endowments in the state of New Jersey without having Princeton at the top of that list. But you'll see where we stand in relation to the other private institutions in New Jersey. The next slide will give you a better sense of where we stand in relation to our peers. Again, note that we're using fiscal year 2018 data. And if we can progress that slide deck, you'll note that this is a bit of a longer list and that we've moved up the list. And we haven't included in this chart all of the schools. We actually, because of the size, had to remove 3 schools. Chestnut Hill College, Mount St. Mary College, and Caldwell University all have under $10 million endowments. So as a fundraiser, I know that we look to raise these numbers, but again, what you should be seeing in these last 2 charts is really a great legacy of the Sisters of Mercy and of our donors to get us into a position where we are at the top of these respective charts. And finally, third-party endorsements are really helpful to share with new donors, with new prospects or potential donors who may not know Georgian Court as well as others. Obviously, our graduates know Georgian Court very well, but in order to increase the number of dollars that we raise each year, we have to go and meet, of course, with new donors, people who may not have an affiliation with Georgian Court. And what these third-party endorsements do is they really showcase our viability. Quite frankly, donors want to support a winner, and these endorsements show that we're a viable and a vibrant option for donors outside of our community. We've talked a lot about the U.S. News and World Report information, but I want to make note of the Forbes release this past fall of the health of nonprofit private institutions, which ranks us 3rd in a tie with Monmouth University and only behind Princeton and Stevens in the state of New Jersey. That is something that is appealing to many donors. And as the president mentioned, they want to know that we're going to be around, that their dollars are going to be used in effective ways, and that will be around for a long time. And when you start getting reports back from institutions like Forbes with this kind of data, that of course helps our case. And then my final slide is something that came out more recently. Stevens Strategy Group developed a stress test for institutions as we traverse this pandemic. They surveyed 900 institutions, and we received the highest possible score that you could get and ranked us within the top 36% of institutions. The direct quote from this survey that I'll leave you with from that report is, quote, "Your institution's ability to weather the post-coronavirus environment is quite good in comparison to your already stressed peers." And to be at the top of this list as well, particularly in these times, I think is also a really good sign for what we're doing and where we are to go. So I want to thank you all for your support, for your advocacy, and for all you do for Georgian Court. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, Matt. One thing I would add in those third-party endorsements is really kind of the underlying strength of the university that's being measured. The rest of that quote from Stevens Strategies did identify cash flow as the most significant challenge we would be facing in the immediate future. And that's been part of why we've been looking at our budget so deeply in what started us off. We're getting tight on time. I'm going to ask Matt McManus to talk to us a little bit about our energy monetization plan, and we will probably extend this time so that we can answer questions later. So we may go till 4:30 or so, so that we can get as many questions in as possible. So Matt, please take it away and talk to us a little bit about our energy plans.
Thank you, Joe. I have the privilege of talking about the master plan and some of the building blocks of the master plan, but it's a real team effort working with the cabinet and the architect that we've hired and then other consultants. What I'm really going to talk about are the building blocks of how we can both improve and drive efficiencies on campus related to energy, and then also how that can be utilized to help fund other parts of the master plan. You'll recall there's 4 major pieces of the master plan. There's the entryway, the development of the new entryway, the road that loops around campus, and then the renovation of the casino and the new nursing center. And within those, one of the things that we have to do is, and going back to the building blocks, is we have to develop the infrastructure and the financial infrastructure and operational infrastructure to support them. So one of the first steps is really to address our energy demand and supply program. I'm going to move through this quickly to give you guys plenty of time to ask questions. But what this program does is it reduces our deferred maintenance costs and downtime for infrastructure repairs. It'll provide us a more proactive and effective maintenance of our campus facilities. It generates, a lot more energy for our campus systems and address sustainability issues that we have currently. Additionally, it will save a lot of money for the campus in relation to energy consumption and spend, and manage that much more efficiently. One of the things that we did was we first started, so how are we going to accomplish this? One of the first things that we did was we did a preliminary energy assessment of the entire campus facilities. So we've been on campus for 2 or 3 months now, evaluating all the data, all the systems, all the buildings, looking at conditions and the data and evaluating that, working with a company called Train. And we're also working with another company called Clearway from the standpoint of the supply part of this project. In the process, we've completed an investment grade audit, and that is just being finished up this week. And part of that investment grade audit also evaluated the addition of the the renovation of the casino, and then also the addition of the new facility. That investment grade audit also included the residence halls. So we're looking at a comprehensive strategy. The implementation of this would be ultimately the construction of a turnkey implementation of building new systems for the campus, replacing boilers, windows, all the delivery systems, water conservation, lighting, HVAC upgrades. So it focuses on existing facilities, and it also focuses on how we can build the new facilities and renovate the casino to operate in the most efficient manner that we can. Early projected savings to the college, we spend about $1.25 million each year in expense. And right now the projected would be about $875,000 expense, so almost a $400,000 savings. Those dollars and savings would be monetized in order to invest the capital back in the campus's facilities and also support the development of the renovation of the casino and the new facilities. And last but not least, as part of this overall project, we're really focusing on the demand systems, but we're also looking carefully at a supply project. And in that supply project, we would install micro generators that would utilize the results from the boiler replacements to be able to fund generation of our own electricity on campus through the use of natural gas. That would also provide us additional savings that we could monetize, and then to drive additional capital to fund the improvements that we need to make on campus related to the master plan, and primarily the casino and also the nursing facility.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
I'll end with that, Joe.
Thank you, Matt. Yes, and again, we had that picture of the proposed nursing health and wellness center as really the key part of our master plan and elements of our strategic compass moving forward to emphasize a program in high demand and one that's brought a lot of renown to the university, improved the quality of our students, improved our reputation throughout the state. We look to expand on that program going forward. At this point, you've seen we've covered a lot of ground, and I appreciate everybody who has sat through and listened and watched. We'll turn it over to questions now. I know the faculty submitted a number of questions to Amitabh, who then forwarded them on to us. Tara will take over at this point, and she's gone through those questions to try to group them together so that they're relevant. And then as time permits, we'll also address some of the questions in the chat room that have been coming up. If we don't get to all of them, we'll have written responses to those by the time that the recording is released to the university. So Tara, go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Marbach. So one of the biggest questions that we got was about the decision to suspend the university's contributions to the 403B for the upcoming year. It seems that when the faculty were considering their givebacks, they didn't know that that was going to happen. And so they kind of want to know why that decision was made and at what point.
And when the faculty were considering it, we didn't know that was necessarily going to be part of our strategy. We really didn't address this or consider this until we started looking at year-end projections and what the implications were for next year. So in the timeline, we had an April board meeting, and I think it was April 20th, April 22nd, something in and around that range, where we presented to the board what the projections were looking like and what next year's budget and what that meant for next year's budget. And the finance committee of the board then said, well, you have to come back with options for developing savings and efficiencies, whether it's new revenue generation, but we don't think you're going to generate new revenues because we don't think students are going to be coming back, or at least not in the same numbers. And that has been a major concern throughout our planning process. What other ways can you cut expenses? And at that point, the board was really pushing towards some kind of reduction in force. That was actually their first option. So we got together as a team. Amy really, in a very short period of time, offered a number of options where we could find some significant savings. The furloughs was one of the areas we looked to, and we wanted to take advantage of CARES funding at that time. But we also needed to find out other ways. So we had senior leadership give back, and then the biggest alternative was the TIA-CREF contribution. So we felt we had to present that to the board as a way of preserving 15 to 20 jobs as part of our budget for next year. And I'm sorry, and that was approved at the June board meeting on June 12th.
As a follow-up, one of the faculty members also asked why it was completely canceled instead of reduced by some amount, and whether you can give any assurances that the contribution would be reinstated after the one-year pause.
We went at the whole amount because we were, under the orders, the instructions to save 2.5 million. So between the contribution and the furloughs and salary reductions, we come in at 1.3 towards that 2.5 million. So it really, we thought about it, should we move to 3%, but it just wouldn't have gotten us to where we needed to be in terms of other cuts. We still need to find over $1 million of additional cuts. And hopefully that comes out of other operations that won't be conducted because there's not a lot of travel. We won't be gathering in places, so we won't be using catering, those sorts of things. But we still need to sharpen our pencils and find savings wherever we can.
Okay, and I had another question about insurance contributions and whether there was, if there was any expectation for a change in the employer-employee share for insurance contributions next year.
Yeah, we don't know, and I want to follow up. We want to restore TIA-CREF contributions as quickly as possible. So it's my fervent hope that this was a one-year solution to to an unprecedented event. Sorry, Gail, had to go there. We don't know what health benefits are going to look like. The healthcare systems are all under pressure because of the pandemic, and their normal operations have been disrupted. So we're seeing many healthcare systems that are running deficits and are having challenging financial times. We don't know how those costs are going to be passed on to the university. Right now, we're self-insured, and that's not a particularly good place to be. So we're looking at, can we join other affiliations or other groups of schools to join a larger network. But at this point, those are prices we won't be getting until October or November. So I can't honestly say one way or another what's going to be the impact on benefits.
Thank you, Dr. Marbach. I think the next question I have is for Amy. Someone wanted to know what the estimated, and I think you referred to this in your presentation, but we haven't yet accounted for the costs to return to campus. So do we have any kind of estimated costs on what the, for the safety preparations to ensure everyone's safety on campus this fall, and how do we plan to recover those costs?
Thank you, Tara. We do not know yet at this point in time how much it will cost. It is outside of the $3.9 million deficit. The board is aware that the budget does not include any budget for returning to campus. We are working with our partner Aramark on sourcing PP&E, working with them on what needs to be done to clean the classrooms, to clean the offices, to make sure that we're in compliance with CDC guidelines. But the short answer is no, not at this time. One thing we will be doing is creating a new accounting codes for purchases that are related to the pandemic, because we don't want that to skew what the original budget for an individual organization will be. So we will be highlighting those costs separate from the traditional operations of the campus.
Thank you, Amy. Janice, I have a question about our high flex plan. So you talked quite a bit about what our high flex plans look like for the fall. Rutgers just announced the other day that they are going to be primarily virtual or remote with very limited housing. And the staff person wanted to know if there was a threshold we would use that would trigger us moving to remote again, or would that only be the case if the governor ordered remote instruction only?
That's a great question that we talked about in cabinet just yesterday. So for sure, we're following the guidelines of the state. So we're not even in phase 3 right now. So everything about high flex really only will apply if we move to phase 3. And if we moved back out of phase 3, then certainly everything would go back online as well. That being said, we did talk about needing to have some kind of local triggers. And so we're working on researching what those might be. Is it a certain number of cases by students, faculty, staff? We don't know, but we are working on that, and we will put something in place to say what it is on our particular campus that would trigger going completely remote again.
And going along with the partial remote, partial high flex plans, is the university able to help narrow that technology gap for some of our students with regards to laptops, Wi-Fi access, and software licenses that we saw in the spring?
Yes, for sure. And we did do some of that in the spring as well, in 2 ways. One is the Angel Fund, which has always existed, but has certainly been focused on helping in this situation. So any student who needs something to get through, including technology, should reach out to the Angel Fund. And I know Advancement has been doing a lot of work developing those funds. The second thing is that we were recipients of the CARES Act, and a good portion of that was directly given to students. And so there was money for them to get the technology they needed using those funds as well.
And I'm going to just take a moment to interrupt and also just give a shout out to the Sisters of Mercy who provided us with a $10,000 grant for the needs of our students. And that is currently in the Angel Fund, and it's designed to meet the needs of the students, whatever they may be, whether they're technological or they could have some other financial hardship that they're facing. And the sisters are currently looking at a second phase of funding that will provide about $8,000 more. So it's been a tremendous boon to be part of the Mercy Network, and the Sisters of Mercy have once again come through for us. So I didn't mean to interrupt, Janice, but we are trying to take care of our students as best as possible, given the resources that we have. Thank you.
Janice, I had a couple of questions about the library. Will it be open in the fall? Will it be open on a compressed schedule? And if we were closed, would be able to circulate books?
Yes. So Jeff Donnelly has been working really hard on this, and he actually just sent me his portion of the plan before we got on, so I don't have it memorized. But first of all, they have been working this whole time trying to address people's needs. But he has reported that things like interlibrary loans are back and available. They also will do curbside pickup for any resources that are physical that are needed. We are looking at having the library open at a very reduced capacity, partially to allow students to use some of the computer resources there. It's a better place than some of our smaller labs because we can really space them out, but also with a rotating person at the desk to help with some of the resources and to be able to pick up materials. So we do have a plan for the library. I apologize that I don't have the exact things, but it will be part of our comprehensive plan that we'll be issuing shortly.
I have another question for you, Janice. What measures are we putting into place to ensure people returning from other states, especially those with recent high caseloads, aren't coming back as asymptomatic carriers of the virus, particularly in light of the quarantine that the governor has instituted for we're up to 19 states, I think, as of yesterday?
Yeah, so any resident student who is coming from out of state will be quarantining in our residence hall. So they will be allowed to come back 2 weeks early. And we have that in place. We've spoken to Aramark about meals and all of that. So we have that and it's in the plan.
Okay, I'm just looking at some of our chat questions. Give me a moment. Okay, I think this is also for Janice. How far along are we with the testing, tracing, and potential isolation plans?
Well, I'm not so sure it's completely for me. That's a multiple person thing. So we are doing screening. We're not necessarily doing testing on campus. And no universities our size in New Jersey are planning to do testing. We're planning to use the resources of outside of the university to handle cases or suspected cases. So we have a screening plan in place, and I don't know if somebody else on the cabinet wants to add more.
Yeah, Janice, I can add that we're working right now with a proposal from Hackensack Meridian to assist on some of the testing that might go on, and and the county, Ocean County, will work with them on contact tracing. So we will be logging in where people are, who they've been with throughout the whole process. So visitors to campus will have to be forced to fill out a screening questionnaire before they come to campus, and then we'll have to keep an eye on where they go, which departments they visit, and who they're talking to, so that we can keep an eye on that. So we're looking at multiple options in terms of just tracing folks on campus, and then if we do need to test if there are reported cases. And this is going to be a difficult area because we may not know, people may not report that they're positive, it may go to a hospital, it may go to the county, but the county's not under an obligation to tell us. So we're going to work with the county on contact tracing, but we may not know who's got the virus. And again, it's part of the privacy and HIPAA requirements that we not know. So that does present a certain challenge, but we will look to hospital system, Hackensack, Meridian in particular, to help us in those areas.
I have a question here that I think should go to Amy. In regards to the financials, are there plans to reduce the cost of the number of consultants we bring to GCU? One of the biggest areas of spending has come from the numerous amounts of consultants we have hired.
We're looking at all areas and all expenses. So at this point in time, we're still investigating. One of the areas, if there is an expense with consultants, what I find as new to the community is that we are so thinly staffed that at times we need special assistance in a particular area, which honestly at times could be cost savings. We don't have a full-time person with full-time benefits. The other thing is, in a small university, unlike large universities, there may be some particular specialty that an individual has that we would need for a temporary basis. And then it makes sense at that point is to hire someone with that specialty on an engagement to support the university.
And I'm not sure who wants to take this, maybe Amy or Janice, but someone asked about whether the possibility of not having resident students on campus at all for the fall because they would face so many restrictions, and it seems like it would be an ultimate savings if we remove that challenge for one semester because of the risk.
Janice, is that something?
I mean, I don't know exactly what to say, but I'll have to say I've heard both arguments. Some people say resident students are risky, others say they're the least risky. So I don't know that there's a definite determination either way. And we had students stay for quite a while in the spring, and they were excellent. They did what they needed to do, and we didn't have any cases in the residence halls.
Okay, I'm just looking to see if there are any more questions. I know we have a bunch of questions that have to do with HR concerns, and I think we're going to save that for our next town hall. But I do have a question about the fact that we've been basically running at a deficit almost every year for quite a number of years, and is there any way to basically solve that issue?
Well, again, as presented a number of times, the deficit that we bring tends to be a deficit from depreciation, that we haven't fully funded depreciation, and then that in turn becomes deferred maintenance. So over the number of years, when we had the study about how much facilities require in terms of deferred maintenance, it came out to be about $35 million. Some of that will be addressed with the planned improvements to the casino and the mansion. They are very big ticket items because of their historical nature and the size of those buildings. It also becomes addressed in terms of new construction. We really haven't had new construction, so it's the way accountants account for this money. Our biggest concern has often been cash flow, and we've been able to deal with that on a year-to-year basis by either getting cash flow advances or borrowing on a very short-term basis by using a line of credit. So this is really a time where we've got to start to look at how do we address that issue, and then it's complicated by the pandemic. So the board recognizes that, and as Amy pointed out, they're not requiring us to have a balanced budget next year. They're in fact allowing us to have a deficit budget, but we think there's going to be so many pressures on that budget that even at 3.9, we still have to find about another $1 million of savings in some other kinds of operations, or make it up in terms of new programming and growing programs. And that is very challenging just because of the uncertainty and students not knowing where they're going to be educated or what form they're going to be educated in. And I know there's been some talk about why aren't we going completely online? And our students have expressed a concern about that. They've been there, they've done that. And, you know, if we went completely online, we would lose students to Brookdale Community College. The community colleges in New Jersey are essentially going all online. So one of the ways of attracting students is by having some type of face-to-face classes, and that's what the HyperFlex model represents to us.
Okay, that's all the time we have for today. So I'm going to hand it back to Dr. Marbach so he can close us out. But I would encourage everyone to join us again for our next town hall when we will discuss more in depth about our reopening plans.
Thank you, Tara. And I do thank everybody for listening and submitting questions. If you have additional questions, you know, please feel free to email them to me. It's easy. It's jmarbach@georgian.edu. I'll get back to you, or if I don't know the answer, I'll make sure the right person who does gets back to you in a timely fashion. This is a challenging year. It's been a challenging year since March. It's going to be a challenging year. We're not sure what the future holds for us, but we will be flexible and adaptable. And even as we prepare for the immediate future, we have to get ready for the longer term. And we can't lose sight of those long-term goals, that long-term vision for where the university can and will be. And while many institutions may flounder during this time, we actually are in a pretty good position to weather this storm and come out stronger for it. So I do thank everyone for listening. I thank the other panelists for their presentations. And I ask that you continue to keep Georgian Court and its students, faculty, its staff in your prayers. Thank you.